Most people think their life will change if they get more money, more time, or more luck. That's a lie. The truth is, your entire life can change with one mindset shift. Not 10, not 1,000, just one. And once you make it, every area of your life looks different. Your habits, your results, your relationships, your future. Here it is. Stop asking, what do I get from this? And start asking, who do I become because of this? That one shift will separate the people who stay average from the people who transform. Most people go through life thinking they're wasting time when they're not getting instant results. They think, I've been going to the gym for 3 weeks and I don't see abs yet. I'm wasting time? Or I've been working on this business for 6 months and I'm not rich yet? It's not working. That's the wrong lens. The truth is you're not losing time. You're building identity. Every choice you make is shaping who you are becoming. And that's far more valuable than the short-term outcomes you're obsessed with. Think about it. If you go to the gym for 90 days and you don't hit your target weight, you might call that a failure. But what actually happened? You built the identity of someone who shows up consistently. You built the mental muscle of doing what you said you would do. That identity, someone who trains, someone who pushes, someone who doesn't quit, that's permanent. Even if the results aren't visible yet, the identity you built is already altering the trajectory of your life. The problem is that most people measure progress only by outcomes they can see: money in the bank, numbers on the scale, followers online. But the invisible progress, the habits, the discipline, the mindset, that's the foundation that creates every visible result later. When you shift your perspective from what did I get today to who did I become today, you stop judging yourself too early. You stop quitting because the scoreboard isn't updating fast enough. You start realizing that every action is compounding, not in your bank account yet, but in your identity. Let's take business as another example. If you're only in business for a quick dollar, you'll quit the second you face rejection because it feels like time wasted. But if your lens is, who am I becoming as I push through this? Rejection turns into practice. You're becoming the person who doesn't get derailed by a no. You're becoming the person who learns to communicate better, to problem solve faster, to stay calm under pressure. That identity is worth more than any single deal, because when you have the identity of someone who's relentless, resourceful, and disciplined, money eventually has no choice but to follow. This is why so many people are stuck. They want to harvest without planting. They want outcomes without building the identity that creates those outcomes. And because they're focused on the wrong thing, they call the process a waste. They don't realize that the person they're becoming is the actual product of the effort. And here's the truth. Once you become the kind of person who does the work regardless of immediate results, the outcomes eventually have no choice but to catch up. Imagine two people starting at the same place. One focuses on results. How much did I make this week? How fast did I lose weight? How quickly did I get recognition? The other focuses on identity. Am I becoming someone who shows up daily? Am I becoming someone who builds value? Am I becoming someone who takes control of their health? Fast forward 5 years. The first person will have quit 3 times, tried shortcuts, and blamed the world for not rewarding them fast enough. The second person will have compounded 5 years of identity growth. And that identity creates unstoppable momentum. So here's the shift every day. You are either reinforcing an identity or weakening it. When you skip the gym, you're not just skipping a workout, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who quits. When you procrastinate, you're not just losing time, you're reinforcing the identity of someone who avoids responsibility. But when you show up, when you push, when you do the hard thing, you're not just getting closer to a result, you're voting for the identity of someone who does what it takes. And that identity stacks until one day you wake up and you are unrecognizable from the person you used to be. The question is not, am I wasting time? The question is, am I building the identity of the person I want to become? If the answer is yes, then you're never wasting time. You're investing it in the most important asset you'll ever have, yourself. Most people overvalue money and undervalue identity. They'll say things like, if I just had more cash, everything would change. But that's not true. The reality is money can vanish. It can be stolen, lost, inflated away, or wiped out overnight by things you can't control. Markets crash. Jobs disappear. Economies shift. One wrong decision can burn years of financial growth. But identity, that's permanent. Nobody can steal who you've become. Nobody can take away your ability to execute, to solve problems, to think clearly under pressure, to build again from nothing. That's why the return on investment of identity always beats the return on investment of money. When you think in terms of identity, You stop panicking when external things fluctuate. For example, if you're the kind of person who's built the discipline to show up and do the work regardless of mood, it doesn't matter if your bank account takes a hit. You know how to rebuild. If you've built the skill of resilience, a failed business doesn't crush you. You walk away with lessons that make the next one unstoppable. If you've built the character of someone who keeps promises to themselves, then no setback can erase that power. That's why identity has infinite returns. It compounds regardless of circumstances. Here's the trap most people fall into. They treat money as the ultimate scorecard. They chase the paycheck, the bonus, the quick flip, and then wonder why they feel empty or insecure once they have it. It's because the money didn't change their identity. They got the prize, but not the power. And when the prize is gone, they have nothing left. That's why lottery winners go broke. That's why people who inherit wealth often lose it. They never built the identity to sustain it. They had the reward without the wiring. On the other hand, think about the people who built their wealth from scratch, lost it all, and then built it back again. How did they do that? Identity. They weren't just chasing the money, they were building the skills, the habits, the resilience along the way. So even when the scoreboard reset to 0, the player was already different. The mindset was different. The capacity was different. That identity guaranteed a comeback. The ROI of money is linear. You spend it, you lose it. The ROI of identity is exponential. It pays you forever. Every time you invest in discipline, you create a foundation that multiplies in health, wealth, relationships, and opportunities. Every time you invest in learning, you create a tool set that can be applied to infinite situations. Every time you invest in character, you build trust, and trust attracts opportunities that money alone can't buy. Think about it in terms of risk. If all your focus is on money, your life is fragile. A bad market, a bad deal, or one unforeseen crisis can wipe you out. But if your focus is on identity, you become anti-fragile. You can take hits, you can lose deals, you can face rejection, and every one of those situations makes you stronger, sharper, more resilient. That's why some people collapse under pressure while others thrive in chaos. It's not about the size of their bank account, it's about the size of their identity. So how do you actually make this shift? Simple, when you're making decisions, stop asking, how much does this pay me? And start asking, who will I become if I do this? Take the job that stretches you, not just the one that pays more. Build the skill that makes you irreplaceable, not just the one that's convenient. Do the work that builds character, even if no one is watching. Because all of that compounds into identity, and identity compounds into results that money alone can never deliver. The person who focuses only on money will always be broke in the long run, not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The person who focuses on identity will always be wealthy because even if their wallet empties, their toolkit never does. That toolkit rebuilds wealth, rebuilds confidence, rebuilds opportunity again and again. That's why the ROI of identity is the only investment that never fails. Because once you've built yourself into someone valuable, the world has no choice but to reward you. Most people fail not because they're weak or incapable, but because they can't handle the weight. They want the result yesterday. They want the shortcut, the hack, the instant transformation. And when it doesn't come fast enough, they quit. That's the pattern that destroys potential. But when you shift your mindset from what do I get to who do I become, delayed gratification stops being a punishment and starts becoming natural. You no longer look at the wait as wasted time, you see it as compounding time. Think about why delayed gratification feels hard. It's because the focus is on the prize, not the process. If you're only chasing the outcome, every day without a result feels like failure. You go to the gym and don't see change right away. You feel like you wasted your energy. You put in hours building a business and don't see profit immediately. You feel like you're doing it wrong. That's why most people quit. They can't tolerate the space between effort and reward. But if your focus is, who am I becoming by doing this? The game changes. You stop looking at today's result as the scorecard and start looking at today's decision as the scorecard. You don't care that you haven't made $1 million yet. You care that you've become the kind of person who builds value every day. You don't care that you don't have abs yet. You care that you're becoming someone who trains no matter what. That shift makes patience easy because the reward isn't postponed. The reward is happening right now in your identity. Delayed gratification is brutal if you're starving for results, but it's effortless if you're feeding off identity. That's why some people can grind for years in the dark while others can't last 3 weeks. The long-term players see every rep, every failure, every attempt is proof that they're becoming stronger. The short-term players see every lack of instant success as proof that they're wasting time. Same effort, different lens, completely different outcomes. Here's the truth: every worthwhile result in life requires delay. Muscles don't grow overnight. Businesses don't scale overnight. Relationships don't deepen overnight. Anything valuable compounds slowly, invisibly, quietly, and then suddenly, if you can't handle the invisible part, you'll never get to the visible part. That's why delayed gratification is not just a skill. It's the price of admission to success. And the only way to make peace with that price is to shift your focus from results to identity. Think about this in real terms. When you invest in stocks, you know the return takes time. You don't panic because you don't see growth tomorrow. You trust the process of compounding. But when it comes to your life, your health, your business, your habits, you act like if it doesn't pay off immediately, it's broken. That's backward. The same way money compounds over time, identity compounds over time. Every choice is a deposit, and delayed gratification is just waiting long enough for the compounding to show. When you start thinking this way, something powerful happens. You stop rushing. You stop feeling anxious about how long it's taking. Because you know time isn't the enemy, it's the multiplier. The longer you keep stacking identity, the bigger the eventual outcome. That's why patience isn't passive, it's active confidence that the work you're doing is building a version of you that no one can compete with. And here's the kicker: the moment you stop obsessing over when the result will come, it tends to come faster. Why? Because you're not wasting energy on doubt, second guessing, or starting over. You're consistent, you're steady, you're predictable in your actions. That consistency is the secret weapon. It looks boring on the outside, but it's lethal in the long run. So the next time you're frustrated that you don't see results yet, ask yourself, am I becoming the kind of person who deserves those results? If the answer is yes, then you're not waiting, you're compounding. That's how delayed gratification stops being painful. You're no longer focused on when the prize shows up. You're focused on the fact that every single day, you're becoming more of the person who inevitably wins. Most people live their lives playing what I call finite games. They think in terms of winning or losing, getting the prize, or failing, being ahead or falling behind. And because they see life this way, they quit too soon. They think the game is over the moment they don't get what they want. But when you shift your mindset from, what do I get, to, who do I become? You stop playing finite games and start playing infinite ones. And that shift changes everything. A finite game has fixed rules, fixed players, and a fixed outcome. It ends when the scoreboard says it's over. Sports are finite, gambling is finite, a test in school is finite. You either win or lose, pass or fail. But life isn't finite. Life is infinite. It's not about one win or one loss. It's about staying in the game long enough to let your identity compound into something unstoppable. Here's the problem. When you chase only what you can get, you play life like a finite game. You try a diet, and if you don't hit your goal weight in 30 days, you quit. You launch a business, and if it doesn't make money fast, you shut it down. You set a goal, and if you don't hit it by your arbitrary deadline, you call it a failure. That's finite thinking. Your results are the scoreboard, and the moment they don't match your expectations, you decide the game is over. But what if the game never ends? What if the real measure isn't whether you won or lost today, but whether you stayed in long enough to become someone who can't lose in the long run? That's infinite thinking. It's not, did I win? It's, am I still playing? Am I still growing? Am I still showing up? With that mindset, you stop quitting early because there is no finish line. Every day is just another move in a game that keeps going. This is why some people are unshakable. They don't crumble when the first attempt fails because they never saw it as the final attempt. They didn't come to win once, they came to keep playing until winning becomes inevitable. That's the mindset shift. You're not chasing one prize, you're building the identity of someone who never leaves the game. And the longer you stay in, the more impossible it becomes to lose. Think about compound interest. Everyone understands that if you keep money invested long enough, the curve eventually skyrockets. But pull out early and you miss everything. Life works the same way. Every rep in the gym, every rejection in business, every lesson in failure, these are deposits. And if you stay in the game, they compound into a level of strength and skill that looks like overnight success to everyone else. But it's not overnight. It's infinite play compounding over time. The people who win big in life aren't usually the smartest or the most talented. They're just the ones who refuse to leave the table. They stayed in the game when others quit. They learned one more lesson, made one more call, did one more rep while everyone else decided the game was over. That's why infinite thinkers always beat finite thinkers. because they simply outlast them. So the question you have to ask yourself is this: am I playing to win fast, or am I playing to win forever? If it's just about winning fast, you'll quit the moment the scoreboard doesn't reward you. But if it's about winning forever, you don't care how long it takes. You just keep stacking, keep learning, keep growing. And eventually, you become the kind of person who can't be taken out of the game, no matter what. When you adopt this mindset, setbacks stop scaring you. Losses stop defining you. Delays stop frustrating you. Why? Because you're not here for one victory. You're here for the infinite game. And the only real way to lose an infinite game is to quit playing. As long as you keep going, you haven't lost. That's the shift. Stop treating life like it ends when you miss a goal. Stop treating failure like the scoreboard that ends the game. Start treating it like a move in a much bigger, endless game, the game of becoming someone who keeps showing up no matter what. Because once you start playing infinite games, you realize something powerful. Time isn't against you. Time is on your side, and the longer you play, the more inevitable your success becomes. Most people spend their lives trapped in competition mode. They look left, look right, and measure themselves against everyone else. Who's ahead of me? Who has more money? Who looks better? Who's winning faster? That thinking is poison, because when your focus is on, what do I get? You're always comparing your rewards with someone else's scoreboard. And the problem with comparison is that you'll never win. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone with more, and that keeps you chasing a moving finish line. But the moment you shift from, what do I get, to, who do I become? The game changes. You stop competing with others, and you start creating for yourself. Here's the reality: competition is rooted in insecurity. When you don't know who you're becoming, you look to others for validation. You want proof that you're doing well, and the easiest proof is that you're doing better than someone else. That's why people obsess over likes, followers, rankings, and recognition. They don't feel progress inside, so they need confirmation outside. But that makes them slaves to external approval. One day you feel good because you're ahead of someone. The next day you feel crushed because someone passed you. It's an endless cycle of winning and losing that never leaves you fulfilled. But when you shift the question to, who do I become if I do this? You disconnect from comparison. You stop measuring your progress against anyone else's timeline because your scoreboard is internal. You're not asking, am I better than them? You're asking, am I better than yesterday's version of me? And that's the only comparison that matters. That shift gives you freedom. It takes you out of the race where everyone else is sprinting toward temporary prizes and puts you in your own lane where you're building something permanent. Think about it. The innovators, the leaders, the people who actually change industries, they don't dominate because they competed harder. They dominate because they created differently. While everyone else was chasing the same goal, they asked a different question, they built a different identity, and they stopped playing the comparison game. That's how you set yourself apart, not by being faster in someone else's lane, but by owning your own. Here's the dangerous part about competing. Even if you win, you don't really win. Because if your identity is tied to being better than others, then the moment someone else rises, you feel threatened. You'll always be anxious about losing your edge. But if your identity is tied to growth, no one can take it from you. Someone else winning doesn't mean you're losing. It has nothing to do with you. You're not running their race. You're building your own identity, and that makes you untouchable. When you adopt this mindset, everything about how you operate changes. You no longer waste energy comparing yourself on social media. You no longer care about people clapping for you. You no longer sabotage your progress by trying to catch up to someone else. Instead, you wake up asking, what's one thing I can do today that makes me a stronger version of myself? And every time you answer that question with action, you win. Because the identity you're building is compounding regardless of what anyone else is doing. The funny part, when you stop competing and start creating, that's when you actually surpass the people you used to envy. Because while they're stuck watching each other and chasing validation, you're busy stacking identity, skill, and discipline. And over time, that focus creates an advantage so wide that people can't even understand how you pulled ahead. The secret isn't that you ran faster, it's that you stopped running their race altogether. So here's the truth: competing with others keeps you average. Creating your own path makes you limitless. Stop asking, am I ahead of them? And start asking, am I ahead of who I was yesterday? That's the real competition. And the day you fully embrace it, you stop being a participant in someone else's game and become the architect of your own. Your environment is either fueling your growth or choking it. And most people don't realize that their surroundings, the people they spend time with, the conversations they have, the standards they tolerate, are shaping their future more than their goals are. You can have the best intentions, the clearest vision, and the strongest willpower, but if your environment is built around small thinking and what do I get mentalities, it will drag you back down. That's why the mindset shift from what do I get to who do I become doesn't just change you. It changes who you surround yourself with. Here's the truth, people are magnets. When you're focused on short-term gain, you'll naturally attract people who think the same way. People who only show up when there's something to take. People who measure relationships by what they can extract. People who celebrate surface wins and mock long-term effort. That kind of environment keeps you trapped because every time you try to rise, they'll pull you back with their mindset. They don't want you to grow because your growth exposes their stagnation. But once you shift to who do I become, you start to outgrow those circles without even trying. Their conversations no longer interest you. Their habits no longer match yours. Their energy feels draining instead of inspiring. It's not that you're trying to cut them off, it just happens naturally because your identity no longer fits inside their limitations. And as you elevate, you start attracting a different kind of person. People who aren't obsessed with quick wins, but with long-term growth. People who push you instead of pacify you. People who challenge your excuses instead of echoing them. This is why that one mindset shift is so powerful. It upgrades your environment automatically. You won't have to beg people to support your growth. You won't have to force yourself to cut ties. The alignment happens on its own. People who don't want to grow will fall away, and people who do will gravitate toward you. Because identity attracts identity, like attracts like. And if you're becoming someone who values growth, resilience, and discipline, the people who share those values will notice and connect. Think about it. If you hang around 5 people who complain all day, you'll become the 6th. If you hang around 5 people who are focused on what do I get, you'll start thinking the same way, even if you didn't before. But if you hang around 5 people who measure themselves by who they're becoming, who hold themselves to higher standards, who don't quit when it's hard, you'll become the 6th of those 2. Your environment either normalizes mediocrity or normalizes growth. And whichever one feels normal to you becomes your life. This is why so many people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They want to change, but they're clinging to environments that don't support change. They're trying to think bigger while spending time with people who mock ambition. They're trying to stay disciplined while surrounding themselves with people who celebrate shortcuts. They're trying to become someone new while living in a world that reinforces the old them. And as long as that environment stays the same, their identity will always be pulled backward. But when you make the mindset shift, the environment shift follows. And once your environment changes, growth accelerates. Suddenly, your standards rise. Laziness feels uncomfortable. Excuses sound ridiculous. Discipline feels normal. Why? Because the people around you reinforce it. You no longer have to fight against your surroundings. You're fueled by them. That's when growth stops being a struggle and starts becoming natural. The bottom line is this: if you want to know where your life is heading, look at your environment, your friends, your conversations, your habits, your standards. That's your future. If you want a different future, don't just try to change your actions. Change your mindset first. Ask, who am I becoming? That question will not only transform you, it will transform your circle. Yeah. And when your circle changes, your entire trajectory changes with it. At the end of the day, your life is a mirror of your mindset. If you keep chasing what do I get, you'll stay stuck in short-term gains and long-term frustration. But if you commit to who do I become, everything compounds in your favor. The skills, the discipline, the resilience, you build an identity that nothing and no one can take away. So ask yourself right now, am I living to collect things? Or am I living to become someone worth becoming? Because the second you make that shift, your future changes forever.